An objection.
Mr. President.
The senator from Missouri.
I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
The senator from Missouri.
I'd like to say a word, if I could, about the nature of my objection. It has been now almost a year since the attack at Abbey Gate in Kabul, in Afghanistan. Almost a year since we lost 13 American service members in that tragic attack. Almost a year since hundreds of American civilians were left behind, enemy lines, abandoned by this administration to fend for themselves against our enemies. And that attack claimed the lives among the 13 of Corporal Jared Schmitz from Wentzville, Missouri. I was thinking of Corporal Schmitz again just the other day when I was driving past the bridge in Wentzville that will soon be named for him. And I am glad that Corporal Schmitz is getting some of the honor that he deserves. But let's be honest. As his father said to me just hours after we learned of his death, what would be far better indeed, would be for Corporal Schmitz, who is a very young man, to be here with us. He's just at the beginning of his service, just at the beginning of his life. And while he was proud, I'm sure, to give his life for his country, it's what he volunteered to do. We owe it to him, I owe it to him, to try and find out why this attack at Abbey Gate happened. How was it that a civilian evacuation was not ordered in time? Why was it that this administration ignored repeated warnings from military commanders on the ground about the dangers that were mounting in Kabul, in Afghanistan? Why was the withdrawal a debacle? Now, I want to give Central Command some credit. They have commissioned an investigation on this point and issued a report, and I have some of it here with me. This is just the unclassified portion. It's 6,000 pages long. And I will tell you, having been through all of it with my team, it's very exhaustive. It took them months to do. They interviewed commanders on the ground. They interviewed military members who were there at the time. They interviewed State Department officials and DOD officials, and their conclusions that are set out here in this report are truly, truly stunning. What they found is that military commanders repeatedly warned the White House, repeatedly, that the situation in Afghanistan was deteriorating rapidly, that the danger to American troops was high, that the danger to American civilians was high and indeed potentially lethal. And what did the administration do? It ignored these warnings. The CENTCOM investigation shows that Tony Blinken's State Department and Jake Sullivan's National Security Council dragged their feet for weeks and indeed months on end. It shows the State Department wouldn't even talk about an evacuation, wouldn't speak of it until it was too late. And the worst of it is, after this botched withdrawal, after this tragic loss of life, the administration took efforts to cover up what had happened. And we're still in the midst of this cover-up. Just last November, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas testified that, and I'm quoting him now, biometric and biographic information was collected from every individual evacuated from Afghanistan. Every individual. That's his statement. He testified that the administration, I'm quoting him now, took a whole-of-government approach, ensuring that Afghans arriving in the United States have been thoroughly screened and vetted. That simply is not true. And we know it isn't true because the DOD Inspector General just released a report debunking it, finding that U.S. agencies did not use available data when vetting Afghan evacuees, finding that some evacuees with derogatory information could not be located, including individuals whose latent fingerprints have been found on improvised explosive devices and are known or suspected terrorists. Here's my point, Mr. President. Almost a year after this tragedy, almost a year after this debacle, there has still been no accountability. No accountability. There has been no one fired. There has been no one relieved of command. This administration has stonewalled, they have dragged their feet, they have refused to cooperate. Oh, we have had hearings and they have had briefings almost entirely behind closed doors. So here is my request. It's what I promised Corporal Schmitz's father I would do on the morning that I spoke to him, that I would seek accountability for what happened in Afghanistan. And that's exactly what I intend to do. It's what I have been doing. Many a time have I been on this floor for the last 11 months seeking accountability, and I have been stonewalled at every single turn. What I have asked for months on end is that the Armed Services Committee hold a public hearing on this investigation. A public hearing, not behind closed doors, not without the press, not cut off from the American people, a public hearing. And I've been denied every time.
Mr. President.
So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to enter this report into the record so that the American people can see what U.S. Central Command found. And until we have that accountability in public, I will continue to ask that the Senate observe regular order and actually vote on these nominees.
Mr. President, will the gentleman yield for a question?
The senator from Virginia.
If my colleague from Missouri would yield for a series of questions, I want to make sure that I understand the objection. I certainly understand the objection as indicated with respect to seeking accountability for Afghanistan. I understand that point. Is it correct that in the committee, however, you supported each of the three nominations who are proffered on the floor today?
A point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President. Do I have the floor when I respond?
The senator has yielded for a question, so he has the floor.
But I'm not asking the question. He's asking me the question.
But you are the one that yielded to the senator from Virginia for a question, so you still maintain the floor.
No, I've yielded the floor. So, my remarks were concluded, so the senator has the floor. I'm happy to respond. I just want to know.
Would the senator yield for a response?
I will yield for a response, yes.
Say one more time, Senator.
My question was,
I can answer.
My question was,
okay.
I believe in the Armed Services Committee, these three individuals, you supported their nominations for reporting to the floor. And I just want to make sure that I'm accurate about that.
That's incorrect, Senator. I recorded as a no.
On all three?
Yes, sir.
Is it the senator's position today that you do not object to them individually, but there are other members of your caucus who individually object to them?
I do object to them, Senator. Are you asking me if I object to having a vote on them, or are you asking me if I object to them? I'm not sure.
Thank you. I rephrased the question.
Okay.
Do you object to having the vote on them? So, for example, I could modify the motion to suggest, to seek unanimous consent that we schedule a vote on these three nominees instead of trying to move them en bloc.
Yes.
And I would be very happy to amend my motion to that if you would find that acceptable.
Yeah, I vote I would like, Senator, but there are other Republican members who have objections to all three nominees, and I'm not authorized to consent for them.
Then let me ask one final question. If we are able to clear the objections of others, would you agree at a time that's convenient for the floor leaders of each party to a recorded vote on the three nominees, if we were able to clear the objections with your other colleagues?
I would like to have a recorded vote. Are you asking me if I'd vitiate cloture, Senator?
Yes, to move to a final passage vote on which you would be able to express your views on each of these three nominees.
I'd like to have a cloture vote and a recorded vote. I'd like to observe regular order on each of these, unless we can make some progress on having a public hearing on this report. That's my position at this time. But again, I'm not authorized to negotiate for anybody else.
I yield the floor.